All right. So, hi, welcome back to my channel. Um, Little different energy right now. Um, I thought I'd talk about retrogrades. But welcome to my channel. My name is Jose. Um, I've said this again sometimes. Sometimes I don't like repeating things. But anyways, my name is Jose, and I do a bunch of things. So music. I used to do swimming, like in a swim team. And I'm just saying that because it's just like, oh, that's right. Like, that's right. I used to do that. Um, and I do astrology, particularly what I call microastrology or working with asteroids. Because I really enjoy going into such details and you never know what you're going to get. You're like, whoa, that really happened, right? And it's just like, oh, some things that you could just speculate with basic astrology or even like a really in-depth sort of, I've seen it, and I'm just like wondering, hmm. But I feel like it's speculative when it's like these things. Usually people base it on specific events and then you go into the reading of the chart. But there's something about predictiveness that I find, and it's actually tied to my past life, which actually got mentioned today. I'll show you how I know that. And I'm just doing it maybe it's self-fulfilling wish. I don't know what it is. But so that's one of the things I do. And one of the things I find even today sometimes a bit challenging to work with. But if you just sit in the moment and pause for a second and use your intuition or feel what's going on there, you really, this is why in a previous video I mentioned like, inner work is important because when you work on yourself, you work on opening things up, you're connecting a little bit more, you're going to higher elevation, you're going to a higher frequency. So you're going to be able to, that's going to be able to help you with astrology because you're literally talking to a person and you're sitting for a client or rather, you're delineating their charts, you're analyzing it, but really it's still the same thing as divining. It's the same thing. It's a bit more scientific. One of them is retrogrades. Um, and it's a little challenging sometimes because we think of retrogrades as like, ooh, it's negative. Ooh, it's a pullback. Ooh, no, I shouldn't make plans on a Mercury retrograde. But what it is, it's focus, right? But here's another layer to that. Um, it is focus, it is concentration, it is kind of going back into what you need to work on. But I noticed that with retrograde, and speaking for myself in general, is I'm actually going to share my chart right away. I'm going to share this simple version first, and then I'm going to go into um, not that one, this one, into um, the asteroid. I'm just going to go quickly into the asteroids later. So you can see I have a retrograde um, Chiron up here. 10th house. I mentioned this before in an earlier video. And this keep this kept happening a lot. And it's still happening to this day where it's like a lot about it is about self-worth, that is tied to Taurus through Venus. Because Venus rules Taurus. That's how you look into that, right? You look at the ruling planet of that sign. Um, you would also look into the ruling planet, by the way, whatever house that planet is in, the ruling planet originally of that house, which is Saturn. Saturn rules the 10th house through Capricorn. So it's a lot about reputation, all that stuff. But because it's rules the 10th house and mine is in Libra, mine is all about relationships. So there's two sides to that. At least two sides. Right. So what I mean is when it comes to retrograde, this kept happening. So what I mean by this kept happening or this continues to happen is because I'm literally continuously learning or being taught and being kind of like, it's like, why don't you learn what self-worth is? Da, da, da. So this is tied to Taurus, right? And also listening to not being too excitable sometimes, not being too overly passionate, but still having the passion, which is too much or I'm trying to like prove something to others. Because when I'm trying to prove myself to others, it's like I overcompensate. And that's where the Saturn thing is here as well. Saturn is about overcompensation. Um, makes sense, right? So I don't need to really prove anything to anyone. That's the whole point. At least it starts there. Um, so I keep remembering this, or I keep being reminded about this one. And I'm reminding myself sometimes, oh yeah, that's right. Don't be too excitable or too, when I say too excitable, I mean like too out there where it feels like it's at the expense of body health and mind, specifically the ear, hair, and hair, because that is Taurus. Taurus rules the ears, nose, and throat. And so for me, it's basically the ears. That's a big one. And also stability. Um, which I'll show you in the next chart actually as well. Why I see that, why it's more specific there. Um, what else was that? Uh, yeah, so retrograde. When you see a retrograde planet, it does go into that feeling. But because it's a repeating thing, it's really what it is. It's deconditioning. Okay? Deconditioning. Because we've been conditioned not only in the life we've known, but generations, centuries, millennia on how to live because the ego wants to be, it wants to live its own way, wants to be its own thing. It's afraid of dying. It's afraid of disappearing. It's afraid of being ostracized, etc. The list goes on and 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 on. But the ego is just a false sense of identity, and it's not really, it just has a function. That's what it is. And so it's not anything but just what it is. As Bashar puts it, it's like the goggles, right? The goggles when we go swimming. The goggles are the ego. We still have a choice on how to work with those goggles to see things from a different lens. So that's something that repeats in my life. So I continually get deconditioned to that. So whenever you see retrogrades, that's a deconditioning. Um, I actually wanted to go into the asteroids here, but I don't know why specifically. Oh, I'm also getting deconditioned to work on inner wrath because that's Typhon right here. This is where it gets into the asteroids. Typhon represents many things. One of them being wrath, like really rage wrath, but it's also square. A square MacGyver here. MacGyver sounds like MacGyver. You know the TV show MacGyver. Anyways, it's square MacGyver, which is also about wrath. Um, so there's a lot of that stuff there. There's other asteroids here too. Like there's the whole balance thing, which is Vesta. Vesta is about standing your ground. So it's square Chiron. So there's a lot of wounding. There's a lot of things that are squaring Chiron in here. Osiris is wounding here. He represents brothers. Yes, betrayal. So there's wounding with that one as well. So then there's Odin, sharing knowledge, re-education. That's also Osiris, by the way. And sometimes I've had a lot of times, not knowing what's going to happen. I used to worry so much about that. But this is tied to Leo. So um, right here, it's tied to Leo. So it's a lot about the ego, the pride thing. So learning about my pride, the death of my pride, standing your ground, but in pure pride, right? That's a Vesta. Um, learning to work with pride with relationships at Didymos. Didymos means twins. Megara, learning to work with what that anger is, where that comes from, right? So it's justice for myself, not necessarily for other people. When I say justice is mine, more like what did I let go? What power did I give out to or to whom, whatever. It doesn't matter. Why did I give out that power? So it's a justice for myself. That's my goal. And then past life wise, this is where I mentioned earlier about the whole um what do you call this? What did you talk about? The whole, if someone were here, you could tell me what I mentioned. The whole thing about it's fate, destiny. Fate Moira is the Moiras, the fates, the three fates. Um, but also choosing, meaning making the choice to be in a relationship with someone or not be in a relationship with how I relate with others, where I'm not really giving too much of myself. That's in my seventh house. Seventh house is relationships. Lempo is retrograde here, so I have another retrograde planet here. But this one's Lempo is actually a dwarf planet. It's way up there. It's in retrograde for me. That means I have questions about being able to maintain relationships no matter what. Literally, no matter what. That's Lempo. He's a Finnish god deity of something like really like love, fertility, back to nature. That's Lempo. Um, there's Calliope here as well. So I always had issues with music. Being able to provide music for others, service. I used to be religious. I used to be in a church. So I'd play and then I didn't feel very energized. I didn't feel like there's something missing. I'm just like, all right, so all of this stuff, square Chiron with Typhon, both retrograde, by the way. Um, and so right there, so I continuously learn how to work with breath. Sometimes I'll have an outburst. I'll be like, what the fuck? But then I realize right away, I'm in that mode now, where it's just like, oh, I did get angry. But that's okay. That's okay to get angry. But what to do with that is a choice. That's where Moyer comes in, right? It's the gifts of the past life I bring into this life as well. There's also the opposition to Helios, Achilles, Apollo, Ganymede, Lilith, Eros, Bacchus, and what's this other one? Balder. So wounding being not being seen, that's Balder, not being, you know, worrying about mm, kind of being invincible. Because in my fourth house, it's like I am protected. But there's a weakness behind it where it's like I'm so protected, I'm so guided that there's wounding behind that where it's just like, well, what about my independence? Right? What about my sense of power? Right? That's Balder. Things that don't last long as well. That's Balder. Eros is that whole sexual energy. I used to have that a lot. So there's a lot of wounding being able to express my sexuality. Bacchus is being able to express, because this is an also Scorpio, being able to express my sense of abundance, my sense of like celebrating. I didn't have power when I was growing up, you know. Mercury is there, of course, it's about communication, not being able to get the right information. Everything was held in secret by family, or at least I did identify that as that. And along with Uranus, which was like I didn't get a lot of that, is very much like there's hidden mysteries in the family, like elephant in the room, that was common. Right? That's very much that Mercury Scorpio thing also with Uranus here. So big stuff. But you know, and then there was a shadow stuff related to Lilith, where it's like I couldn't embrace my true what people call your demons. But when I did, it was just like, oh, reputation's bad. Right? My Chiron is in the 10th house. Ganymede is like that whole like being used for service when you didn't ask for it. Ganymede is like the cupbearer to Zeus. So Ganymede is being kind of like the slave boy, the boy toy sometimes, depending on where it is. So I used to kind of have that too with relationship. I didn't feel like I was myself in relationships. So I was very much like the boy toy, figuratively, literally, whatever it is, right? No, I wasn't a boy toy. Um, and there's Helios, not being able to be recognized and not being able to shine. That's Helios or Helio. Achilles having that weakness. But because it's square to um, Chiron, it's opposite of Chiron. It shows that it's like I did have one of my weaknesses is with like because I wanted power is because I that became a weakness that I didn't have it. Meaning sense of control, being sense of security. This is in the fourth house, security tied to Cancer. And Apollo also not being able to shine. Something to do with being multi-talented, it's closer to fifth house, so it's more to do with entertainment as well. So people just, particularly like my parents, whoever was the financial one, both of them, both parents didn't really recognize the gifts. I would say this is my mother. The 10th house is my mother, represented my mother. She was more like the breadwinner sort of the family. My dad was more of the nurturing one, give or take. something like that. I mean, I'm not judging it anymore. I'm just like saying that's what it is. But it is now, now that I see it, it's like, oh wow, okay. Yeah, it was my mother. So there's a lot of anger there, deep-seated anger. And she has shown that as well. So, um, but you see how it's like when you have retrograde planets, it's lessons that you continue to learn until you actually continually grow to learn the lessons. So this is one of those things. So I hope that helps. That's the best. When it comes to retrogrades, I'm just giving an example with my chart. Okay. Um, so it is a deconditioning. That's the whole point I'm making with this video. It's like trying to really well, yeah, decondition or uncondition what was conditioned, especially from generational and historical and all this stuff, thousands of years of conditioning. One last thing I did that came to mind was that it's not just deconditioning, it's because it's also why when we get repeated instructions, it's like, I'm not learning, it gets until it gets ingrained. But I feel like that's exactly why we get repeated instructions. So it came to me, I just, why is it that we need repeated instructions? Why do we need manuals? Why do we need this and that, and this and that, this and that? That's because that's what it is. But don't think of it as if you're always going to plateau. Once you get something, you're actually taking steps. And it could be, you can think of the analogy of like steps, right? But you could also think of the analogy of a rising hill, like this. Eventually, you will get better, right? So that's my little spiel for today. Thank you for watching. Comment down below if you have any questions, comments, coffee, tea, whatever. I'm weird. You know how it is. The other thing is, yeah, like and subscribe. That's it. Thank you for watching again. I'll see you guys later. Bye.